Good afternoon, Patriot pals. Thank you for joining me. Have a good day and God bless you. Let's get into the news. A number of leaks are coming out of the J6 committee revealing the frauds that both the committee and Liz Cheney really are. The Washington Post is reporting that a number of Cheese 6 committee staffers are openly criticizing the outgoing congresswoman and exploiting the committee as a stepping stone to further her own personal aspirations. One staffer complained, quote, "We all came from prestigious jobs, dropping what we were doing because we were told this would be an important fact-finding investigation that would inform the public. But when the committee became a Cine 2024 campaign, many of us became discouraged." Well, what do you know I didn't keep in mind? This is coming from the Washington Post. The Post seems to already be preemptively railing against Cheney to squelch any possibility for stealing any thunder from Democrat candidates regardless. According to the Post, 15 former and current J6 staffers stepped forward and expressed their concerns that the final report from the Kangaroo Committee, which is supposed to be released just before Christmas, is focusing almost entirely on President Trump, rather than the actual facts of what happened on that day. In other words, these obviously young idealistic staffers are concerned that the J6 committee has turned into nothing more than an anti-Trump partisan witch hunt, which of course it has, and has been from the moment of its inception. And as a result, these 15 staffers feel like all the research work that they put into this project is being ignored or even entirely omitted from the final report. Apparently, they were interested in what actually happened on J6, while Cheney and her ilk on the committee were interested only in political retribution. Now, unfortunately, the concerns expressed by the staffers that Cheney sees the committee was nothing more selfishly right than a mechanism to try to tear down Trump, all the while elevating herself politically. Those concerns are being realized with the leaks about the report. We now know what the report is going to look like. It's now been confirmed that the J6 committee report is nothing but one big massive nothing burger, a pathetic attempt at a political hit job against President Trump, literally nothing more. Politico is reporting that each and every chapter entailed in the report, 8 chapters in all, are all centered on Trump. Chapter 1 is Trump's effort to sow distrust in our nation's election. How dare he? Chapter 2 is Trump's pressure on state officials to overturn the election results. Chapter 3, Trump campaign efforts to send pro-Trump delegates to D.C. blah. And then, this is some big news. Alright folks, so it seems as though people are getting quite frustrated, and honestly, I feel the exact same way. I noticed that over the years I'm becoming a little bit more black pill. Now of course I generally try to remain as positive as possible, but on certain issues I just can't deny it anymore. I can delude myself. I'm becoming black pilled, and specifically, it's on the issue of accountability. How much more evidence do you need? How much more evidence is necessary? Yet even when presenting the receipts, a bombshell of epic proportions, the scandal of a decade, people seem utterly uninterested. So let's continue to talk about Twitter files. Let me show you guys what some people are talking about. And then let's focus specifically on the word accountability. We've got some stuff to get into. So let's roll the tape. Alright folks, so Twitter files has hit, and for the most part, there's nothing really that brand new or shocking. It's a continuation of everything that happened behind the scenes at Twitter in the decision to ban Donald Trump, but honestly, the biggest bombshell in the 4th segment of the Twitter files is the OL Ross push for a permanent suspension of Matt Gaetz' Twitter account over his Antifa claims, where apparently OL Roth pushed for this suspension even though it didn't quite fit anywhere. And it was kind of a test case for the rationale for banning Donald Trump. The Twitter files continue to show us just how politically biased these decisions have been. But the 4th Twitter files drop has been relatively uneventful, at least in comparison to the previous 3 drops. I think we can all agree with that. And this has people getting frustrated. Here's a tweet from Tim Pool. "I'm over it. Tim says this is getting dragged out too long and dropped at the worst times. It's one thing to slow roll, it's another to do a Saturday night drop. This is usually done when companies want to kill the story." Andrew from Don't Walk Run Productions writes, "I don't have the tolerance for this super slow rollout of Twitter files. Number 4 and beyond. It's just boring AF and needlessly drawn out. Especially during the evening on a weekend, I suggest catching up after the final tweet from each trenches posted, read everything at once. A lot of people are unhappy with the slow roll of Twitter drops. And while I understand the frustration, I think it's pointed in the wrong direction. I don't think the issue is that it's a slow, I think people just frankly don't care. And of course, I think the media is corrupt. And that's probably the most important factor. That's a separate issue. And we'll get to that later. The simple fact of the matter is that people just don't care enough. We have proof that unelected technocrats are colluding with Democrat heavy hitters in the FBI to control information on social media platforms. I mean, that is the scandal of my lifetime. It's legitimate, at this point. Irrefutable evidence of a massive conspiracy to interfere in American elections sound like a broken record, of course, because I've been saying it over and over again. But it's a big friggin' deal. And the outrage is minimal. Most people either aren't paying attention or aren't making enough noise. This is potentially the sign of the actual end of American democracy. And I mean, that literally not just the buzzword nonsense rhetoric that we hear from leftists in the media, it's something that should make people angry and outraged, legitimately so, rightfully so. But that frustration, it isn't there. There's no protests. And this is what I say about conservatives all the time. What do you think you're going to accomplish as a voter base if you're unwilling to protest, if you're unwilling to get frustrated and make your voice heard? I mean, that's what Democrats are doing all the time for the slightest, littlest thing they protest. Now we have the potential end of American democracy. Shadowy elitist groups working together, conspiring to undermine American elections, to destroy the Republican Party and the will of Republican voters. And all you see are people tweeting about and complaining, and when Donald Trump vents his frustration on Truth Social, you even see some supposed conservatives attacking Donald Trump for his frustration, because he might have misspoke or said something a little bit unclear or which can be interpreted within a specific way. It is sheer cowardice. You know how Republican voters expecting accountability for their opponents when they're unwilling to even hold their own leaders accountable. Sebastian Gorka did a poll on his Twitter yesterday, where he asked users this question: will the GOP do anything meaningful with Elon Musk's Twitter files disclosure? An overwhelming 85% of respondents said no. Well, if you believe that that's the case, once again, where is the outrage? It's just generally accepted that nothing's going to happen, then that the GOP is going to continue in their passive ways and letting the Democrat let's walk all over them. Well, of course, that's going to be the case if there's no significant pressure from the GOP voter base. And I don't know if we're seeing enough of that pressure materialize the entire system. All of these most powerful institutions are working together to destroy Republicans. The problem here isn't the Twitter drops or how they're being released, the lack of damning evidence or bombshell details. The problem is American voters being too passive, too distracted, and not paying attention to what's going on. And Republican voters themselves are part of that problem. And then, of course, there's the compounding effect of the fact that the media is totally compromised, totally corrupt, and they're essentially moving forward as if this Twitter file story doesn't even exist. I mean, this story is something for the history books and the media just doesn't care. You know, if you think about it, maybe that's why Joe Biden decided to trade Victor Bout for Brittany Griner at this specific moment. Maybe they weren't open to the deal. But once they realized that it would make national headlines, maybe they thought, it's a great distraction. People will be talking about Brittany Griner instead of all the bombshell revelations at Twitter. And so you see, the normies are just not paying attention. Media is compromised. The media is corrupt. They're doing the bidding of the elitist globalist class. They're part of the Twitter files, conspiracy and scandal. They're probably one of the most major players, and you have a lazy, uninformed populace that is just not interested and doesn't understand the severity of the information that's dropping. That's why there's no accountability. And it's frustrating to go through this cycle over and over again. That's what I was saying in the intro, where I'm starting to get a little bit black-pilled. I mean, after what Hillary Clinton in the DNC did in 2017, all the way through Donald Trump's presidency with the Russia hoax, after we saw the media totally mislead and misinform the American public with a clearly fabricated garbage narrative story, whatever you want to call it, after they manipulated evidence and even presented false evidence to the courts to get a FISA warrant. After all of that, and after all of the revelations, there's still not a single person who has been truly held accountable. And once again, you have a distracted, lazy populace that is just totally uninterested. And that is where my frustration lies. I'm not frustrated by the fourth segment of the Twitter files being dropped on a Saturday night, or that the files are being split up into segments or sections. and being released slowly over time. I'm frustrated in the fact that these revelations are shocking, disturbing, horrifying, whatever you want to call it, and that most people either don't know what's happening or just don't care, and that you have the other side that chooses to be complicit in all of this corruption, chooses to look the other way because it benefits them. How can you ever see accountability in this environment? I just don't see it. There needs to be immense political pressure on the GOP to not let this story just fizzle out with time like they've allowed to happen with all of the other ones. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section. Of course, leave a like if you enjoyed the video, and of course possibly subscribe if you're up for it. I'm gonna get back to work. I want to thank you guys for watching